Henry Kissinger says in his book, World Order, the challenge of our generation is really to look at the rise of Asia and the rise of China and how the world incorporates them into the world order, into the future of the world. And that our challenge is to keep the dogs of war at bay. That's how his book ends. And really it was with that thought in mind and my experience in the U.S. government and the United Nations, where Asia really wasn't at the table at the level it needed to be, that I thought there's nothing more important to do right now than to really tend to that piece of work. And Asia Society is the place to come if that's what you want to do. So that's why I'm here. Well, when I was new in foreign policy and trade policy, working with the U.S., I joined Asia Society many years ago because this was the place to be. If you're doing Asia work, you have to be a member of Asia Society. So I was. And certainly through its history with the leadership of Hank Greenberg and Nick Platt and John Whitehead, and I just wanted to be part of it. And it's considered in the world the place to go. That was years ago. When I was approached about this opportunity, I mean, I have to say I was really honored because Asia Society has such standing. It has such history. And the fact that we have the Rockefeller Art Collection, the Rockefeller Route, is something that the world doesn't take lightly. This shows we were there before Asia became the hottest place on earth and everyone wanted to be in Asia, that Asia Society was there. And to me, that part of our history, that when Asia had not yet begun to rise, when Asia wasn't the place to go for business and policy and art, that Asia Society was there during the difficult time is really what makes this place so special and was so attractive to me. It turns out John D. Rockefeller III's vision of how the U.S. could really build deep, long-term strategic relationships with Asia was quite visionary, was quite ahead of its time. I mean, he talked about working together as partners, of not just trying to transfer the American ideas to Asia, but to learn from them and to find the place where these come together to build a more prosperous and secure future. And it was at that moment that this idea for an Asia Society was born, as far as we can tell. John D. Rockefeller III came back from his experiences in war-torn Asia and gathered the best minds of the time, including John Foster Dulles and others, to say, how do we tend to this relationship? How do we deepen the ties between the U.S. and Asia? How do we ensure against the kind of tensions and war that has torn Asia apart and the world apart? How do we make sure we're doing as well with Asia as we are with Europe? And that's where Asia Society was born. Yeah, I don't understand how John D. Rockefeller III foresaw so much. When he visited Asia, it was really in the rubble of war, and poverty and hunger were rampant. And yet he foresaw a century when Asia would be the engine of the world. I don't know how he had that understanding, but what I do know is he treated the leaders of Asia with the respect that was equal to the other partners of the United States. And we have been told by a vice premier of China that they remember that they were treated with full respect even when China was really impoverished and trying to come out of the throes of the Cultural Revolution and dealing with all of that. And you hear that throughout Asia, that Asia Society was there not just to do business, not just to do trade, not just to make money, but way before all of that, and stood with us. And so that vision, I think, really showed that this institution was about something much bigger than the opportunities. It was about building that partnership and building a more secure world and more prosperous world, regardless of the standing of those nations at the time. Well, when I came here to Asia Society, the question I thought we had to ask at this point in our history is, if John D. Rockefeller III were here today, and he knew all he knew about the internet and the potential of utilizing technology to connect, how might he have structured Asia Society differently? And so we have put ourselves through the challenge to say, how do we fulfill that original mission, which was quite bold, quite revolutionary, and totally relevant today, perhaps even more relevant than it was back then? And how do we take the power of technology and bring those together? And we call this rebooting Rockefeller, because this really tells us that in 2.0 Asia Society, in this new era, we can leverage this vision through technology and the internet in a way that I think John D. Rockefeller III would be so excited about. Back in his day, it was quite revolutionary to bring a Balinese dance troupe to the U.S. No one had ever seen this. This was the beginning of cultural exchange. These were bold moves. Today, of course, on the internet, people can see all of this cultural expression. They can hear policy debates. Throughout Asia, they can access things in every language. But what they can't do is connect with each other on these without a connective institution. And so our goal is to not just have these experiences there, but really to bring together the East and the West to understand each other better and to dig under the surface of these experiences and to power that up through technology. So I think one great example of the DNA of this institution, how we operate, would be our work to bring Myanmar back into dialogue and relationship with the United States and the world. A symbol of our success was really when, after that concluded and relations opened, the president of Myanmar came and spoke here at Asia Society, and Aung San Suu Kyi came and spoke on different days on the platform of Asia Society, with mutual respect for our work. This is what we strive for, really, is to build the bridge between the opposites often, the parties that can't talk, the places where conflict would happen, and create that bridge. And we use all the tools in our toolkit. And often the art can be as powerful as a well-reasoned policy paper. And here those things come together for a new kind of chemistry that we find can really move things forward. So when I came, Asia Society had been deeply involved with trying to reopen the bridge of dialogue between the United States and Iran and the region, for the purposes of just getting those discussions going. And as we know, Iran and the U.S. now talk directly. And so at that time, we were able to host the president of Iran, President Rouhani, and I interviewed him, and I was quite pleased that he was willing to take questions from Twitter, from the internet, and all the questions we asked really came unpreviewed, and there were no restrictions on what we asked. It was an important moment for the world, I think, to feel they're able to ask these questions as the U.S. and Iran entered these discussions on the nuclear arrangements. And I felt, again, something that at Asia Society, our mission is the more we may disagree or feel worried or offended by actions or situations in countries, the more we feel we must get in there and ask questions and try to ferret out an understanding of what's happening. So that's our mission, is to really go to the toughest spots and to really try to open some new pathways. It's interesting, people ask about the rise of Asia, the rise of China, and actually history shows us that the world doesn't handle this very well. So in the past 500 years, there's been 16 cases of a rising power challenging established powers, and in 12 cases, war has happened. And so we feel it's very important to try to place the weight on the scale for another outcome. That other outcome would never mean a weak America or a less prosperous world. This has to be solutions that really build a more prosperous, stable world and a great, successful America, in addition to the success of other countries. So this really is kind of our focus, is finding those win-win kind of tracks. So Asia Society has launched the Policy Institute, really coming into our 60th anniversary. And this is designed to be a different kind of a think tank, a do tank, one that is strategically focused on looking for those opportunities where bringing together the right people or the right strategy could really unlock a big problem. Kevin Rudd, who we brought on as the inaugural president, calls it preventive diplomacy, this ability to get just ahead of the curve and help prevent the kind of heartbreak and loss and sorrow that happens when we miss these moments of opportunity. And so, for example, in Asia today, there isn't a strategic tripwire. If there's some conflict on the seas or in the sky, there isn't a red telephone kind of connection between the different countries to prevent that. And we've brought together leaders from throughout Asia to try to prevent that. These are projects really based on a short-term goal that we feel is doable and reachable. And there we're different really than any other think tank on earth. One reason Asia Society started this Policy Institute is most institutes take the view of their nation. They come with the foreign policy of China or Japan or the United States and build the world around that. But there was no institution systematically bringing together different parties to come to a pathway with equal representation of different points of view. That's the unique mission of the Asia Society Policy Institute, is to find those pathways through a multi-referenced policy perspective. It's why we formed this institute after so many years of doing great policy events, to really take our art form and put it into a formal institute so that we could tackle these issues systematically and build the support for the team that can do that. So education was so important to John D. Rockefeller III, and it was really a core principle of Asia Society. And I couldn't be prouder of our track record in education. This institution foresaw a globalized world and the need to build a curricula framework to be able to prepare citizens of the future for that world. And we now are the go-to place in the world for understanding what that global curricula looks like and how to prepare high school students around the world to actually be the leaders of the future. Our curricula framework is totally unique, has been built in partnership with the Gates Foundation and others, and is ready now that the world, through the Sustainable Development Goals at the United Nations, has set this as a top priority. So Asia Society is really being tapped by the leading institutions in the world to come forth to help them understand how to approach this. We also have the largest Mandarin language program outside of China, according to the government of China. We have 40,000 American kids studying Mandarin, connected to more than 100,000 children in China. We feel this is very important. In the 80s, Americans thought we better learn Japanese. Now, we need Americans who understand Mandarin and are able to really interact and connect to this rising power in a very meaningful way. So this education work for us is really a core of what we do, and perhaps our most impactful area in being able to shape world thinking on a new opportunity and challenge for the world. Here at Asia Society, we feel our mission is so powerful, we just want to be authentic to that. To tackle that mission of building that bridge, opening new channels of understanding, and bringing Asia into full relationship and dialogue with the world. And so with each program we do, that's the test we put to ourselves. We have launched the Asia Game Changers Awards to fill a gap. Of the 950 Nobel Prizes awarded since 1901, only 6% have gone to Asians. Asians have not been at the forefront of recognition for their perspectives and brilliance that they bring to the global table. The Asia Game Changers Awards is helping fill that gap. And so we are seeing people so inspired by those identified through our survey of thought leaders throughout Asia and the United States. And this is something we feel is not only a great celebration that we do at the United Nations, but also a lasting legacy of identifying the leaders who are really changing our world and bringing Asia's brilliance to the center of the world. Well, the secret sauce in Asia Society are the people that make up Asia Society. Not only is the staff incredible, these are people who maybe felt a little out of place in the world because they were people with a more global perspective, a passion for Asia, a passion to build the bridges, and here they find a home. And we have the most incredible staff and team around the world whose art form is how do we build these bridges. It takes great skill and sensitivity. But our trustees are like this also, and so here, the board of directors of Asia Society is not just a governing board. These are people intricately involved with the mission and helping execute that, and some of the greatest practitioners in business and foreign policy and arts and culture the world has seen. My hope and dream for Asia Society would be that we take on this biggest challenge of our generation, of this century, the one that Henry Kissinger says is the task of our time, which is to look at the rise of Asia and how we incorporate this into the world without war or conflict. He said, the key to the future is being able to connect the dots to a successful future for the nations of the world that's prosperous and secure. But the challenge is, with this unprecedented quick rise of China and Asia, that those dots, there's no reference point in history that we can rely on. The way those dots are formed will be a pattern we haven't seen before. So we feel it's our mission here at Asia Society to not only try to connect the dots, but also to create the dots that can lead us to a future that's secure and prosperous. That sounds big and lofty, but it's really what motivates us, and it's what really, I think, attracts people to be part of our institution. And frankly, I think it's what John D. Rockefeller III woke up every day thinking and dreaming of. We're so grateful to him. He was an extraordinary human being. And we're so proud to be part of the legacy that he invested his time and his capital to help create. And so that is our root, that's our DNA, and we feel more passionate about it than perhaps at any point in history, and more relevant. And that is our future, and that's the goal we hold ourselves against.